Hello, I'm Josh Stanish, and I'm going to tie a fly that's been very popular in the Rocky Mountain West over the last few seasons. It's called the Chubby Chernobyl. The Chernobyl ant has a long history behind it, and this is just one of the changes that's taken place over the course of the evolution of the flies. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm basically using a 4x long streamer hook here in a size 4, and I tie these primarily more in 6s and 8s and even into 10s than I do on the 2s and the 4s, but we'll go ahead and do it on this big hook so it's easier for you guys to see. We'll go ahead and attach our thread, which our thread is just a 140 denier thread from Wapsi, their UTC thread, and you can use a fairly heavy thread here. And we're going to get started by just putting a little bit of crystal flash in the tail. And I like to put my crystal flash in old Bic pens. It just holds them all together, makes it easy to access. We'll go ahead and we're going to pull out probably 10-15 fibers. And we're just going to add a little bit of flash for a tail here. Go ahead and tie this on. Wrap over these butt ends, just get them so they aren't sticking out later on. You like to tie this in back to about the same point. If you let your thread hang down, it'll hang right to that barb of that hook, and that gives you about your good starting point. Go ahead and just trim these off. So we have a little bit of sparkle on the back end of this fly. Now the next step is it has foam on it, and this is just regular 2mm foam. And I'm going to use a stonefly cutter. Get it here on the camera. And it just makes it easier than trying to trim this off. So I'm just going to stick this on the table here, and it's nice and simple. It's a really sharp blade. Just stick it in your foam, give it a couple pushes here, pull it out, and it's going to give you a nice pre-cut foam strip. I'll just pull this out of the foam, make sure it's long enough here, and not quite. I'll have to redo that. I'm going to actually do it this way. I'll come in with the scissors and I can cut it a little extra length here. All right. So now we've got, and you want this to stick over the eye of the hook a little bit and then also off the bend of the hook a little bit. So we're going to go ahead, and now I need to put a little bit of dubbing in place. And this is just a super bright dubbing from Wapsi in their golden stone color. And it makes a nice kind of sparkly body for either a hopper or a golden stone. And you can tie this fly in a lot of different colors. They tie it in red. They also tie it in kind of a burnt orange for a salmon fly, lime green. There's a lot of different variations to this fly. So you just have to change up the color of the dubbing. We'll go ahead and put a little noodle of this dubbing on. It's a synthetic dubbing, so it's not going to dub real tight, and you don't want it to dub real tightly. We just need enough on here just to cover a little bit of the back of the hook. A little bit more. And the key with dubbing is you always want to make sure and not use too much at once. It's always easier to add dubbing than it is to take it away. So be sure you don't get too much dubbing going on. All right, now we're going to take our foam piece that we cut here. I'm going to tie that on, make sure we got it lined up right. Do a couple loose wraps, get it tight in place. You can go ahead and make a fairly good gap here because you're going to put some rubber legs on. So I like to make a nice little space right here. Make sure you get all the way back to that dubbing that you'd already tied on the bottom. You want to make sure you get this foam lashed down right to where that dubbing is. So I go ahead and do that. Now our next step is actually to put a little wing on here. And I'm using a product called Gator Hair, which you can get from Montana Fly Company. Poly yarn works really well. Any of your synthetic yarns that float will be good for this. It's just a wing. It's more for the angler's vision than it is for anything. So we'll take a couple little strands here, cut this out. All right, so you got a couple strands here. Now what I'm going to do is pretty much split this and tie it right on top. Lash that down, and then I'll just fold this back over to give us double the amount of wing on here. And this fly really stands out well on the water. That's probably why it's been so popular. It's a great fly to see. If you can't see this fly, you probably need to just stick with a big indicator that's easier to see. So now our last step, or our next step, we're going to take a little bit of, this is perfect rubber. You can use all kinds of different rubber leg material, and you can vary up the color of rubber legs you use as well. This is called motor oil. It's kind of a drab olive with some sparkle in it. Go ahead and get a piece of this out. Now we're going to tie a leg on each side of the hook here. Get that in place. You want it right on the side, about at the same level as the foam. So I'll do this back one, and then I'll show you the front side so you can see it a little better. Tie this in, and it'll want to rotate under for you, but you just want to pull it right back up so it sits right in between that foam. Get it secured. Now you have both your legs on there. Go ahead and with some more dubbing just to cover this up and make this look a little nicer on the top. You can use dubbing wax, but I like to just use a little bit of get these out of the way here. Now you're just going to come right between these legs, and this will help to spread them out a little bit, plus it just makes the fly look a little nicer. Having a little issue with this one here. There we go. Get that, and then you're going to go ahead and pull this foam back. Now we're going to just dub up the rest of this hook here. This takes a little bit of time. I've tried using some chenilles to do this just to make it a little faster, but they don't come out looking quite as nice. So dubbing seems to be the best trick so far. Be sure you really pack this dubbing back here at this first part. Keep going with it here. You could also, if you're into making dubbing brushes, go ahead and make dubbing brushes with this already, and then probably speed up the process a little bit, but I've got enough to preoccupy my time with other than making dubbing brushes and all the other little gadgets you can make. We're going to get up about there where we leave a bit here. Now we're going to do the same step as we did on the back. We're going to fold this foam over. Give us a nice little gap to attach our second wing, as well as another set of rubber legs. Go ahead and get some more wing material here. You're basically repeating the same process as you did on the back segment. Lay this right on top. When you do wrap this, be sure you come all the way to the front of your little gap here that you're making on the foam, so that when you fold it back, it gives you the same diameter all the way around on that whole space there. It'll just make your fly come out a little nicer. So we got our two wings. Don't worry too much about your rubber legs, because you can always adjust them when you get done here. Tie one on the back side. One more piece for the front. Back to a little more dubbing. If you get too much, it's hard to get it to attach to the thread. It was a dub over our little space we made here just to pretty it up. Pull it forward, get a little more dubbing right in front. A little whip finish here. And you can just come up and trim, square off this front end here so you have a little bit of a tag sticking up. Pull your wings up. I like to trim the front one back to about where the back one was, and then this one you trim about the length of the tail. Now you have a nice double wing. Pull our rubber legs down together. If you get them all in one bundle, which can be a little tricky at times, get them all in one bundle, and I try and trim them all at the same time, and it should get them fairly close to the same length. You may have to come back in and readjust them a little bit. But this fly has a bunch of movement. It floats really well. You can hang big beadhead flies off the back. You can even hang rubber leg stones, stuff that weighs a whole lot. And it's just been a great fly for a lot of people out here in Montana and Idaho, and it's become one of the kind of standards at the fly shop. So that would be a fun one to do. So there is a Chubby Chernobyl.